Hey, what's up, beautiful people? Welcome to Friday night, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, your place for unfiltered conversations with the Unfiltered Experience. Hi, I am Christopher Rausch.
And I'm Scott Goyette, and you are going to work on some, I'm going to work on some technical difficulties, and I'm going to be right back because I'm going to get our guest on. So you take the stage, and I'm going to do some work. And I'll see you in a second.
I will take the stage and see you in a second. I'll watch you in the background. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys, as always, spending your Friday nights here with us, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, here on the Unfiltered Experience. It's really our true desire every single week to bring you guys unfiltered conversations that inspire you to think about your future differently, to inspire you to look at the world differently, to become more infatuated with the solutions of what it is that we can do to bridge our differences in the world and bridge our differences with ourselves and humanity, rather than looking at what it is that we can't change and being more frustrated about that. That's what the Unfiltered Experience is about. We're going to be bringing you even more deeper conversations about current events and things that are going on, because we want you guys, our unfiltered crew, to be a part of that family. We want you guys to be here talking with us and exchanging with us so we can all grow together. This isn't about a conversation where we're having a one-sided conversation. We want you guys to be a part of this because your questions and your opinions matter as well with that. So we just appreciate you guys being here with us every single Friday night, whether it's live or on the replay. We happen to know that things are opening back up, so I know that people are getting outside. So we value you guys watching us on the replay. And as well, by the early next week, we're going to be launching the podcast as well. So if you want to take us on the go, we'll have that opportunity as well to be able to go ahead and have you guys listen to us on the go as well. But tonight we have a great conversation coming up with you. We have both of our guests in the back room right now. We have Scott's in the back room. We've got our guest Earl in the back room. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring my buddy back here because he fixed his hair. So it's all good. Look at this. Look at Scott. He's a gorgeous human being. What's up, Scott?
Chris, I did not finish fixing my hair, dude. Seriously, you got to take me off screen. This is not presentable.
This is presentable. You are gorgeous.
All right.
Look at that. Here.
Hold on. Hold on.
There it is. Solo layout.
Working. Hold on. Bring me back. I was wiping some sweat on my forehead. Hold on.
There you go.
Give me.
Yeah, see? Makeup.
Right, now we're good.
Dude, when are we gonna get makeup? When are we gonna get?
Dude, we gotta afford that. Because
I mean, I use my wife's. This is not even a joke sometimes because I'm like sweaty or I have oily skin, and sometimes I was on camera earlier and I was like, oh my god, I'm like glistening. I go take my wife's whatever it is. I swear to God, whatever, I don't know what color it is, and I just blot it and
So you know what? And all jokes aside, something that we should share this with everybody too. So when I was getting, and you got your pictures taken, our headshots and some action shots for video and stuff, for promotional material. He has these little pads that are actually better. They're little blotting pads. And you do it right before you take, they'd be perfect because they last like an hour. You just hold it on and it like pulls out oil. So it gets rid of that gleam or sheen, or I don't know what the hell the word is, but it takes care, it gets the Charlie Sheen off your face. So if you've got any Charlie Sheen on your face, this is how you remove it. These little pads. I think they're like Neutrogena cleaning clear or something.
Oh yeah. My wife has those. Those are great.
That's what you need, man. That's all we need. I'm going to go buy those. I'm going to go to Walgreens. It's going to change everything. People are going to start really liking our show because we're going to have reduced Charlie Sheen.
Yeah.
Once you have that, everything changes.
Once you wash the Charlie Sheen off you, that's good. You know what, dude? This is funny. We're going to bring our guest on because I want to dive into this conversation. Hello, Patricia. Hello, Lynn. Here's something funny. My wife knows that I can detour a conversation I don't want to be a part of really, really quick. Usually I can do it subtly and people don't even realize it. And she'll come back to me. She'll, you didn't want to talk about that, did you? And I'm like, nope, because I'll take you. I'm sure you're the same way. So when Charlie Sheen was doing his Tiger's Blood thing, I swear to God, some people would be having these heated conversations, and out of the blue one night after drinking a little bit, of course, I was like, well, what would Charlie Sheen say about this?
Oh, you told me about this.
Everybody would stop and go, they would immediately start pontificating like, oh, he would do this and he would do this. And my wife would just look at me. She's like, and so it became, you're going to do the Charlie Sheen thing tonight. I said, if I have to do the Charlie Sheen thing, I'm going to do it, because if I see a discussion escalating in a place that's not going to go anywhere. What's up, Marlene? Good evening. Good evening.
Charlie Sheen.
What's really crazy, just to tie it all together, is I just saw an interview with Charlie Sheen on some YouTube station, and he's really cool. I mean, he's been through a lot and he talks about it. He makes fun of it, but in a way I feel sad for him, but in a way I'm really inspired by him, much the same way with Robert Downey Jr. So
I was just going to say that. I was thinking, like, as you were speaking, I was going, I actually agree with you. And I would add in Robert Downey Jr. because here's the deal, dude. They messed up, they made mistakes, but they're owning it. And that's okay. That's okay with me. Nice call, dude.
Yeah.
Are we in the same brain?
Oh no, something like that.
That's scary. That's scary. Well, I got another guy we can bring in who might be in the same brain. He's a little bit smarter than us.
Let's do it.
That's okay. So, we love to do some shows that are super funny. We love to do some shows that are super deep. We love to do some shows that have people that are absolutely amazing, that have overcome some incredible stuff. This person brings in a little bit of all three. And he's somebody that I actually met at a Starbucks. And I meet people at the strangest places, where one of the reasons that, you and I do this show, Chris, and we talked about it, is one of the most beautiful things about just sitting at a restaurant or sitting in a bar or sitting at a Starbucks is sometimes you go just to kind of people watch and people listen. You'll just sit and kind of do this and be drinking your coffee, or, you're with your wife, but you've been together for a while. So you stop for a minute, listen to the table next to you. And that's what we want the show to be, that there's a great conversation happening right next to you. And you almost want to stop your own conversation to jump into that. That's what the Unfiltered experience is. That's how I met our next guest. He was sitting and listening to a conversation that I was having with a former student who we were building a business together. And we started talking, and we literally fell in love with each other's hearts. I always talk about, like, you meet somebody and instantly you're super connected. And he was one of those people. And so I came to know him in so many ways, and he was like us. He was building up his heart. He was still wearing some masks, and he's trying to show a side of him and show, part of who he is. But all I saw, outside of, what he was trying to show me with his heart. And I just saw this absolutely beautiful human being. And we've had so many deep conversations, and he might not even know how much of an impact he's had on me, because sometimes we're not always as good as we can be telling everybody. But he'll know tonight, because I'll remember every single thing he said. And as we reference conversations, he'll recall, because one of the things that I do is, when I hear things that really mean something to me, is I catalog it, I hold on to it, and I use it as part of my memory and as part of my brilliance, so that I can share with and guide others. So without further ado, a beautiful human being, somebody's going to teach us a lot, Earl Ameen.
Earl Ameen, welcome to the Unfiltered experience, brother. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing quite well. How are each of you tonight? I think I already know. But...
James Earl Jones in the house. What the hell?
The only thing that upsets me about Earl, and I've had this conversation with him, is I always said, I'll tell you a little quick 2-second story. I'm always like, why do you always, dress, so nice? Why aren't you comfortable? And he goes, I am comfortable. I'm comfortable looking really nice. And I was like, touche. Because I'm always like, we go meet and I got shorts on and sandals. I'm almost like, you have to wear a shirt in Starbucks? Are you serious? And he looks good every single time. So I love it.
Well,
nice.
I appreciate that.
Thank you for spending your time with us. And to Patricia's comment, she says, I hope you record this.
No, this is the only show ever that we're not recording.
No,
because we're nervous.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, we're recording it. Patricia's our dear sister, friend, mentor.
He knows it.
Yes, we got Ben Hayden in the house. Ben says he's winning.
That was a Charlie Sheen reference. I see where you're going with that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Cleaning up my background a little bit.
We have a highly educated and deeply connected to Hollywood fan base here.
Exactly. So lead us off, Mr. Scott.
All right. So here's the scoop. I recall a beautiful conversation I had with Earl. And again, like I said, we one of the things that we do here, it's pure unfiltered. We don't even talk about exactly what we're going to talk about. So Earl doesn't know the leading questions with great intention, because what happens is we end up organically speaking from our heart. We don't need to write something up and say, what are we going to say? One of the times that we met up, we were talking about the difference between, I believe, and you correct me if I'm wrong, because my memory isn't always flawless, but I think we were talking about the difference between racism, bigotry, and what was the third one? Prejudice. Thank you.
Prejudice.
I was there. I was going there. I just needed a second.
Yeah, you are.
And we were talking about the difference, and I remember we had a good 2-hour conversation. I can even pretty much say I think I'm right on point with the time. And we talked for a while about it, and I loved your breakdown of the 3 of those points. And I know everybody is either sick of or thinks we need to talk more of that topic, because they're either like, guys, all lives matter. If everyone just shut up, would be fine, and there's no problems in our world. And then there's the other side who says, I hear you. So if all lives matter and there's a body part hurting or a life or specific group of lives that are hurting, can we address that so that all lives matter? And for me, it seems so obvious, but I also want to be honest with myself. it's so obvious, but it wasn't that long ago that I might not have had that same thought. Because in high school or in college, you know, there were people that are speaking from different directions and you're getting all this info and you haven't firmly chosen a side or an opinion only because it doesn't affect you. And when something doesn't affect you, it's easy to stand over here and be saying, come on, man. Like, what's the big deal? So start that conversation with us again. Give us a little rundown. What the heck is the difference between racism, prejudice, and bigotry?
That's a great question.
All right.
Oh, wow.
Well, he already answered it for me, so I'm literally just spoon feeding it. I'm just alley-ooping his intelligence. That's all.
Yes. Well, thank you for remembering that conversation. It was some time ago. However, I've been asked that question many times since, or had to, in answering other questions, bring this differentiation up. So I have no problem being around, engaging, talking to a person who is prejudiced. None. And why is that? Typically, we use that term to insinuate racism, but it really is misused, are so many terms, because prejudice is simply prejudgment. It is the first impression that you have of a person. And so, or even before you connect with that person, know that person, or even see that person, you may have some understanding or some model, some concept of expectation of that person based upon random information or information that has been passed along or collected through a medium that doesn't really verify the veracity of what it is presenting. But we all have an image in our head. And I've tested this many times with high-powered executives, saying, okay, I'm going to say some words to you. And just don't answer, don't say a word. And so I'll say things like orange, yellow, green, black, white, facial tics. We answer to everything. And if you are an observer, you will see how people respond to baseline stimulus. Now, I'm not a scientist. I'm just a very keen observer. Prejudice is not problematic and should not be a party to the discussion around racism, because it is as common as opinions. Everybody's got one. So prejudgment is simply a first impression or a pre-established impression. I'm not concerned about those things. But once you engage me, into your line of sight, you see me, and you take that prejudgment, and then you carry that prejudgment forward, and then you expand it into expectations that are based solely upon your visual perception of me. The melanin in my skin is only the result of light refracting off of it. It has no personality of its own. It is not a virus. It doesn't speak to me at night. It doesn't say, watch out for this or watch out for that. It's just there. Like some people have moles on their body. Like some people have hair and some people don't. It does not define me on what most would rationalize is a racial basis or bias. It is simply a biological effect due to the randomness of birth. Now, you take that person who is engaged in a racist mindset, and I'll explain what racist means to me. And they take it further and they say that, well, because you look like that, then you must be this. Because you look like that or come from there, then you must be this. And therefore, I will embrace that as my truth And I will filter everything that I interact with you about on that basis. That is a participation in a system of race. Therefore, racist. Now, to make that simple, if I were a participant in the riding of a bicycle, what would you call me? You would call me a cyclist. So the ist just means that you are a committed participant. So if you are a feminist, then you are a committed participant in the practices, in the understandings, in the belief systems around femininity. Now that can be applied politically or sociologically or otherwise, but still, it's a participant. A humanist is a person who is a participant in the understandings, in the mindset, in the beingness of what it is to be human. So racist is just another word in the list, but it does speak that you are a participant. Now, if you are a participant by training, by development, meaning my father thought this way, my father's fathers taught this way, my father's father's father taught this way, or mother, or so on, then it is less likely that you conscientiously chose. But I can tell you this, that you are not born an ist, except in the realm of the humanist. You are born with the same interests, the same understandings, the same outlooks, the same desires, until someone, something, some belief is put into your mind that says you are a specialist. So you are a participant in some speciality, and then use that speciality to create differentiation or division between yourself and another's self. So I'm just breaking it down. So when people use these words, they use them and they attach venom to them. They attach all kinds of things to it because they think that the word is emotional, and it is not. I do not use it because I'm not attached to it emotionally. And it does not, if it is not a tool that I can use to my benefit, then why carry it around? I know when I'm talking to someone who, on the basis of looking at me, has already judged that I am this, and therefore they will think and treat and speak to me and consider me in a specific fashion. And that's also very human. So it still doesn't become the basis for me to become argumentative. Doesn't become the basis for me to say, hey, look, unless you cross the boundary of human regard, unless you try to take or force my dignity from me because you think that somehow, because of the content of a chemical in my skin, that my brain doesn't work the same way as yours, that I don't have the ability to think and speak in the same manner in you, or because your lineage is lacking this particular chemical, that makes you better than I. So I want to insert into my dialogue that these are all taught things. Otherwise, they do not exist. An interesting thing I learned last year is that the Greek statues that almost everyone in the world is familiar with, they're white and they're made of marble. They're not white representing white people or white power. They're just the canvas. And back during the time where they were made, they were painted, and they represented the person that the statue was a copy of, and that person's face and their skin tone and their hairstyle and what they wore. It was very colorful. Over time, the sun removed that coloration. But back then, you couldn't go around the corner and say, hey, yo, I'm looking for that black guy. What? You had to know who that person was, who his family association was, or what he did. I'm looking for the soldier named this, or I'm looking for the baker, or I'm looking for the hammersmith, or I'm looking for the milliner. You had to know something about whom you were seeking, and it wasn't just, hey, where all the black people live at. This was something that evolved later, and years ago, decades ago, in our country, the necessity to manage resources came around to creating a system, and this was post-construction after the Civil War, because prior to the Civil War, there was not the necessity of creating systemic distribution of resources on the basis of the differentiation of people. It was just, there's white people and then there's everybody else. So after the Civil War, when slavery was no longer the law of the realm, it was still the mindset of the realm. So there had to be a change in how that system was applied. So it could not be applied to the physical body, should not be applied, should not have been, but still was. So it switched to the mind. So let us categorize you in a way that says in every way, shape, form, or fashion that you are still a slave and subject to the will of the ruling class.
So
now,
here's a quick question I want to ask you real
please.
quick. So I'm following you to this point, and I have a feeling right now that a lot of people, as they're listening, have their thoughts of what racism means. And you're
Sure.
doing a great job of breaking it down. I want to come back to that in 1 second, because I have a question for you that I think you're going to do a great job answering. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on what bigotry means, so we can have those three. So we understand prejudice is nothing more than prejudging. And when you said that to me, I love that, because here's the deal. When I first meet you, I'm like, all right, there's this strong black guy, must have played football, must have been this. I asked you the questions. Where did you play football? I did.
Yes,
Come on, man, you played football. And you're like, well, did you play basketball? Like, I did. And then you're like, no, this is what I did. So I thought that was beautiful that we had that moment of like, okay, I prejudge, but I'm not the next parts.
It's called sniffing butts. You're like,
yeah. It's probably something I did that just, I'm sure that there was something I did that created those. Yeah, we'll go there.
Yes.
So I want to come back to the racism piece, and I've got a question that I'm sure a lot of people are asking. And when people listen to this now or later, they'll want to have that answered. Tell me a little bit more, because I love where you're going with this. Tell me a little bit more about what bigotry means, because right now I want people to think: am I prejudiced? Am I racist? Or am I bigoted?
Yes. Thank you for bringing me back to that point. As I said, I have no problem with the prejudice. That's all. I'm prejudiced. I prejudge. However, it's the choices that I make after I have that prejudgment that determines whether I'm going to participate in identifying, categorizing, or classifying that person according to a class of race, and then engage them accordingly. Now, I don't necessarily have a problem with self-appointed racist. I understand the basis by which they choose to participate in a system of race. It's the bigots that's where I struggle as a human being, because a bigot will look at me, not only see the melanin in my skin and determine that is me. Then on the basis of that, the information, the heritage that was passed along to that particular person, which includes that, hey, because of the content of that person's skin, not character, the content of that person's skin, then they are this, they are that, they're everything down from being not a human being to being a monkey, to being an animal, to being a dog, to being simply should be eradicated. I have heard it all. So a bigot is one who is willing to act on the racist mindset in order to maintain separation. I don't want if I could stop you from speaking to me, except when I give you instruction and you say yes or no, then I'd love to have it that way. And do not think that even existentially that a person containing a person of my, what I like to say, my particular pigmentary persuasion, even has the same degree of right to exist. And bigotry is really the problem in America, not racism. Racism is a cognitive function. It's something that you think about. And you're going to draw from whatever makes you feel safe, whatever makes you feel secure, whatever makes you feel empowered. You're going to draw from that. But if I ask you any level of question deeper than your perception, it's going to fall apart for you, because I will not match your perceptions. I will not match your prejudices, your prejudgments. I will not match what your family or friends have said is true about me without ever knowing me. But a bigot, it doesn't matter. I don't care what you say. I just know I don't like you. And I'm going to give you a certain amount of time to get out of my face, as far away from me as you can, with a 6-shooter on his hip. Oh, that's a true story. But
tell us that story.
I'm always seeking to learn. My father said to me, seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. So learning is how I self-define. If ever I cease learning, then I'm near the grave. So there was a time when I was very curious, because I was attending school in the South. And so I'm unafraid to engage in a conversation. Talking is not typically perceived as an act of violence. It is today. But talking is typically not perceived as an act of violence. So if you approach someone with a level of respect while maintaining your dignity, typically you can engage in a conversation by first presenting the fact that whatever you believe is all right with me. And I only want to understand what you believe and how it relates to me or those like me. So I've spoken to, it's been enough time now. Yeah, I've spoken to Hell's Angels, Ku Klux Klan members, militia groups. I've spoken to some of everyone, because I never entered that conversation with a prejudgment. I simply said, I'm going to speak to this human being in an effort to understand this human being, in an effort to identify and understand their beliefs, because I define belief as being in the living of. If what you're talking about isn't matching what you're walking about, then you don't believe it. So I looked to see if it was really a belief. And in the realm of the bigot, it is a belief system. It is a belief system. And so, okay, I'm not going to go in and make any attempt to change or dissuade your belief system. I simply now have a better understanding, and knowledge does gift one with power, and knowledge applied brings one to the truth. So I used that knowledge to come up with this differentiation. And then over time and interaction, I identify people who were just prejudiced, who would just as easily say that, oh, you must be a football player.
Wait, me?
No, I'm not blaming you. Not
you I am. No, but I admit it. I see people like, you must do this, you must do that.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Basketball.
Well, I'm
far looked at me and went, "Oh, he's wide. Like a gun guy."
I'm far too wide to be assumed a basketball player, but football player or wrestler, I get quite often, still to this day. So I simply developed a response to that. That was, well, I could. Football was an option until I discovered that the price that they pay and the money that they make are both not worth it. So I pursued more cerebral pursuits. But and it was interesting to see the looks on many people's faces.
Okay, I have a question for you before you go any further, but I want to capture some of these comments. Thank you, Earl. I mean, literally, Scott told me, he goes, we're going to hand it off to Earl and he's going to talk. And normally, God's honest truth, as host, we do not let people talk for that long. But what you were saying was such gold and such silk. I mean, it was really, I've never heard it said in such a way, in such a manner. So thank you so much. And thank you, Scott, for bringing them on. I just want to say, we got a few people in here. We got Patricia in the house. We got Pamela in the house. She says, what's up? What's up? Darlene's in the house. Thank you for being here, Darlene. She goes, hey, you beautiful peeps. I'm so happy to be here. Patricia says, I love you, Pamela. And Chad says, Chad's here. Good evening, gentlemen. Patricia says, committed participant. I think you have a new fan. I'm just going to tell you this away. Away.
They're already good friends. They're very good friends.
Yes.
Oh, they are. Oh,
you don't. Cool. I'll explain the story later. Earl and I have been friends for a long time. Patricia goes. She starts talking. She's like, "Yeah, I'm working on this book with this guy Earl Ameen." I'm like, "Shut the." And so, long story short.
Oh wow! So the
world is such a. This is a person from Canada. Earl's in Austin. But it's just so weird how everyone knows everybody. So
look at that right there. She goes, "Earl is my mentor and genius." I thought she just made that correlation right now. I'm like, "Oh damn! Check you out, dude. Check you out. I gotta acknowledge Andrea. She's here in the. Oh, she says, "Oops." There was the other one up here. She's like, hey, Christopher, just want to say, hey, thank you for being here. Thank you all for being here and a part of this discussion. That's what this is. This is a discussion with you guys here as well. Marlene took a great quote. You have said so many great quotes right now. Seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. Absolutely. Absolutely. Marlene also says being the living of being in the living of. Yeah. Yes. So and I applaud you because I'm a big guy about, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Stephen Covey.
Yes.
In all of those conversations that you had with those different groups, what was the commonality? Because Scott and I talk about, and Scott has taught me this, I give him the credit, that we can only be looking through one lens at a time, whether we're looking through the lens of love or looking through the lens of fear. What is the commonality of these groups, of the individuals that you see, and how can we as outsiders, people sitting there trying to understand them, how can we bridge that gap to potentially, create some more understanding, or is that even a possibility at this point, based on that belief system you said?
We think, therefore we are. So it is always possible to change. And the undeniable truth of that is choice. That's really all we're talking about is choice. But the further away we get from the belief that not only do we have a choice, but we can utilize, we can target, we can apply that choice, then we tend to succumb to external pressures. The media, the family, the neighborhood. We begin to take on those identities. But the baseline is that understanding choice. So yes, in answer to your question, there's absolutely, it's never too late to choose differently. Never too late. And I have seen it happen. Grizzled people who live their lives. One of the greatest mentors, Mr. Gillum, and God rest his soul, would call somebody. I can speak plainly, yes.
Oh yeah, it's Unfiltered. Shit, fuck that, damn. Be my guest.
Yeah, I appreciate and respect that the system has designated that we should not use a term but call it by its first letter. But so many people are dishonored. Both in the application of it and in the silencing of it. Because the term nigger does not mean what people think it is. It's an assignment. This is the evidence that it's a system. It's not a people. Because nigger comes from the word niggardly. It's in the Oxford English Dictionary. So it's just slang for those who are lazy and shiftless. And does it not make sense to apply that to an entire people's? That you need by economic necessity to maintain a mindset that they are lazy, to have them believe that they are less than. So use a term that can always reference, almost as code, always reference to the meaning of a term that existed quite openly in the English society. To be niggardly wasn't a racial slur. It was speaking to someone's character. Now look at that lazy so-and-so.
So where did that shift happen? Where did it become? How did that part start? Because honestly, I do not know that part.
Well, one has to understand one's history, and when delving into your history, you must do so as a blank page, because otherwise you'll get attached to someone else's perception of history, and you never get to the truth of it. But in the formation of this country, many things happen, and I am not a conspiracy theorist. I simply go back. If I don't identify it myself, I don't speak to it. But it was necessary. You know, all I have to do is say the Lynch letters. You know, and many people will say, "Okay, he knows what he's talking about." That it was a system, and the Lynch letters was actually the program that taught you how to maintain slaves, the mentality of slavery. And yes, it's never too late to choose again. So that included a system of language that once you inculcated that into that slave base, that slave society, and they began to use that language towards one another, then they were subconsciously enslaving one another. Now, it's not an unknown tactic. It's a tactic that's used for good or for bad. Things are not always intrinsically just bad. It's how you choose to apply them, to utilize them.
And we've seen the exact same thing happen, you know, with women. Is, you know, men, we'll sit here and we'll go to the gym and we'll compete and we'll tease each other, but we don't really put each other down. Like, yo, bro, nice shot, whatever. Women destroy each other with great intention from the patriarchy to keep women subservient to men. And so that tactic goes, and I'm in full agreement with what you're saying. It's a slave mentality, keep people down tactic, and it's disgusting. And I'm glad we're talking about it.
But it doesn't just apply to persons, again, of my particular pigmentary or ethnic persuasion. That same mindset is applied throughout our society. 100%. It is why women make 70 cents to every dollar. It is simply a system of controlling. Remember that racism, let me explain racism. At racism, ISM is system. So apply ISM to a word, and you have a system of that word, or whatever that root word is. So I don't talk about racism. I talk about the system of race, because then I can separate myself, maintain my dignity, maintain my I am, maintain my Earlism, and I can look at that system and call it for what it is. It's just a system that's designed to do a certain thing, and its fundamental operating system is to categorize how resources are distributed based upon that system of categorization. So you either have limited access up to total access. So that's where white came from. But interesting thing about white, you've heard white, mongoloid, negroid, but there's actually 4 categories: white, mongoloid, negroid, and Austroid. Austroid are the Aborigines of Australia. So the Caucasians are from the Caucasus Mountains. The Mongolian is from Mongolia, which was a place. So Caucasus, Mongolia, and Australia are places. Tell me where Negroid is. It's not a place. It's a designation. It's an assignment to keep in the dark all that carry this banner.
Wow.
I can go really deep into it. I just want to keep it simple, that it is a system.
Yeah, we actually have a question based on that. So thank you. I mean, Jesus, I could listen to you all day. What did she say? Marlene asked, she goes, where was there an antidote to dissolve that kind of tactic?
There was Jesus. There was Buddha. And I dare say, for those who actually know, not the modern day perception of what Islam is about, but it just means peace. But each of these three taught about peace, and including, dare I say, that there's also Judaism, all talk about peace. So the thing that I protect is my peace. And so I did a course last night on blame. For 2 hours, we talked about blame. And so in this current tense environment in this country, everyone is blaming. And all blame is, again, a systemic term for the assignment of responsibility. So I blame you for the hot dogs, being gone out of the refrigerator. Now I just assign the responsibility for a circumstance that I encounter. But does that make it true? When you were 6 states away and could not have possibly eaten those hot dogs. But we tend to take blame inward and then self-assign it. So because you weren't there and so got hurt, I blame myself. When that's really not useful to anyone to blame yourself, to assign responsibility. Sometimes it's an act of hubris, of ego. So what I want people to understand is that be mindful of the words that you use, because you too can become a party to a slave system that tells you what to think, tells you how to think it, tells you where to go and what to do. Take a moment to identify those key words and study them etymologically and identify where they come from. And you like, well, that could apply to anybody. Well, why are they talking about these people in that way? A question that I've heard a lot, and I think this will resonate with your viewers, is why do those people go and burn down their own community? Well, let me give you some insight. It is not their community. They don't own it. They don't own anything. They are simply there paying a toll for the right to live there because there is a system of limitation of access. And that's not true for everyone, because I could certainly hear the argument saying, well, you people have made such strides. Why are you still talking about this? Well, it's because you're only seeing the surface alteration. You're not seeing the substantive inalteration, that things are still so much the same. And I'm not a complainer. I'm an observer. I look for the truth of it. So we talk about Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter, the only thing that was problematic with the choice of name and how that was brought forward is that I would have liked to see a deeper consideration to the application of inclusion so that diversity could happen next. So Black Lives Matters, if Black Lives Matters spoke to it as, we recognize that all lives matter. But because of circumstances that prove themselves, we want to remind you that Black lives matter too. Now, if you're going to stand up and argue against that comment, which is irrefutable, undeniable, provable, statistically valid, well, that just tells us who you are. You just want to have something to argue about. So that would remove the argument of no, all lives matter. Because you've already made the statement, you already own the commentary that all lives matter. And we want to remind you that Black lives matter too.
So I'm actually going to step up and go one step further than that. And because you say everything's so perfect, and I totally agree with you. And I was a big fan of exactly what you say, because I'm all about word delivery and marketing. And come on, guys, you blew it. But here's what came out of it. And I have a feeling you might agree with me on this, and maybe you won't. But what I realized is it doesn't matter what was said. The same people are going to still be entrenched and say, F this. The fact that you said that Black Lives Matters is what they said created so much more conversation, almost because of a poor marketing strategy, and it created more discussion. So I will say this. At first, I was like, that was so stupid. You had a great opportunity. And I was really upset with the movement's terminology and naming. I'm like, guys, if you just wrote Black Lives Matter is part of the whole, Black Lives Matter too, whatever you want to say. I thought they blew it. I've seen more discussions that I'm sitting there going, no, guys, they're saying this, and watching the inflammation of that, because it forces the conversation. I mean, listen, we've got Amish and all these different groups that don't, put their hand over their heart to the flag. But as soon as a black man kneels, suddenly the world just goes crazy. I mean, we needed the depths of this conversation. So I don't know if it was genius, luck, or what, but I think Black Lives Matter now. And this is why I love when you wait, because a lot of times you look at something and go, you guys blew it. And then you're like, no, I was wrong. I think it was genius to say Black Lives Matter, because even Chris and I have had the conversations, and Chris will be the first to admit, when we first met, he said all lives matter, not out of racism, not out of bigotry, he's like, all lives matter because they do. But then when we had the conversation, he goes, I see. So we're treating the wounded part of the group first because all lives matter. I'm like, yes. And it was so easy for him to understand. But that discussion doesn't happen if we say Black Lives Matter too, because then you just sit in your space and never grow. So whoever created that, I don't know if it was with intention, but it was genius.
So the timing of that introduction, that was genius. But unfortunately, not before, in many cases, that mission, that mindset, that conversation was co-opted.
Yeah.
So what's happening in Seattle isn't really about Black Lives Matter. It's about those who co-opted. Because if you think that if a bunch of black people took over 6 blocks of a major metropolis city, that the police would just be, well, hey, you know what?
No
Until
problem.
you feel better about it, hey, we'll just back off. We won't even come inside. Yeah. So I won't disagree with what you're saying. I'm just saying that as a response to those who were so adamant in that, no, let me negate that Black Lives Matters by saying all lives matter, and further, blue lives matter, or red lives matter. It's a co-opting of it. At that point in time, you could simply say that, hey, look, all lives do matter. We just want to remind you that Black lives matter too.
Totally agree. And I love the fact that these discussions got heated because of the misnaming, so we can have more of the conversation. The question I wanted to ask you too, and let's go down this road. So right now, there's somebody who's listening who's saying, yeah, I definitely still think all lives matter, but I kind of hear you. I see what you're saying, but if we just said all lives matter, none of this would occur. Okay. And I also hear people who are saying, I grew up poor. Everyone's saying that, it's race, but it's really a socioeconomic thing. And honestly, the most racist people I know are black people. I want to hear you, because I could explain it, but it's not important. I want to hear you. I want to hear you explain.
I'd love to hear your explanation.
I'll give mine after. Mine after. I think you know it. We've had this conversation.
Yeah. And again, which is why I chose to express and define prejudice, racist, bigot, as a choice of continued participation in a system of belief. So, you really can't say, I can't say that a black person, which by the way is a good time for me to interject that even the term black is an assignment. Negro was an assignment, because the reality is that I'm not African American. I'm actually an American, born, raised, actually have the birth certificate and the passport, but I am an American of African descent. That is an undeniable truth, and now brings everything to even. But yes, Can an American of African descent be as or even bigotly racist? Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a choosing of the relationship that you have with difference between this look and that look. I choose now to focus not on difference, but on distinction. Because now when I look at the two of you, I could sit here and say, I'm a black man sitting up here talking about what I think and what I believe and what I know, talking to two white guys because they got a TV show and I'm trying to get my message out. Well, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm doing. I'm recognizing that as an American existing in a so-called free system, and by right of constitution, the ability to express myself, this is one medium by which I do it. And it so happens that I am engaged in doing so with two other people who share the same belief. And because of not our differences, but our distinctions, we're able to engage in that conversation without it become divisive and argumentative.
Okay, so we've got this whole world right now that is in different levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and it's not even important to think about that. What we want to think about is we've got people with different emotions and needs not being met, and we just don't feel that good. So we've got a bunch of people that don't feel that good, and I love that you reference that you just did a 2-hour program on blame. We want to blame someone because we don't know why the hell we're feeling this. So we all want to be grounded. So here's the three of us. There's a bunch of people watching, a bunch of people they're connected with, people all over the world, 7.5 billion people. We're all sitting here and we're saying, what the hell's going on in this world? We're going to wake up tomorrow. We're going to do enough to earn and get some food and take care of our people. What do we tell those people so that we can find our infinite power, which is there, our infinite potential, and stop saying, that's why I'm not successful. If that person wasn't here, that person's a criminal. That person, as you said, nigger Lee, isn't even the word, which I found beautiful to listen to because it's an association with lazy. And we talk about that, the inner critic, the voice. If you can own the inner critic, you can own an individual. But here's the thing. If you can empower the heart of an individual and they direct their own inner critic, they can contribute their brilliance to the world. And why do we not all want that? Because what I want everyone who's ever going to listen to this to hear right now is, do we really want groups of people to be less than so we can be better? That's such a misery enjoys company bullshit, just horrific mindset. Now watch this. What if you and your group of 5 friends or 10 friends or 20 friends all said, I'm going to do what I'm really good at and share with you. So your buddy who's amazing at making blankets. I don't know if you got a buddy who can do that. It'll be cool because then you get a blanket. Somebody who's good at cooking, somebody who's good at art, somebody who's a good singer. Everyone does their thing and makes the community better. Instead of this enslavement of shut up and do this, if we all bring our brilliance to the table, we're literally living in heaven. So what do we tell those people who are so hung up on the isms, all the isms? How do we take the step by falling in love with ourselves so we can start to observe, which you use the beautiful word, observe the isms and help impact the isms to change the isms? Because you and I fell in love for the exact same reason. You said it. You come here and you're like, perspective, change, learn. It's like we meet each other like, teach me. And neither one of us is trying to outdo the other. We're like, ooh, good point. Tell me more. It's like, oh, I love that. Like we could have sat there literally, we could have slept at Starbucks and just listened to each other all day because it's new perspective. And what do we do to encourage Earl and Scott conversations, Earl and Chris conversations, unfiltered experience to the family conversations that just get us to fall in love with this connection and end the blame and end the bigotry? That's the one I'm hearing you, man. I want to yank that one. What do we tell people?
Yeah. And I'll
Hang on one
start.
second. Actually, somebody wanted, this is a perfect time for that. Somebody wanted you to encapsulate the bigotry part again. It was a question that was asked up here a little bit. Like, can you just encapsulate that just one more time before you dive into that answer? And that's a great question.
Sure, happily. The difference and distinction between the prejudice, which is the prejudgment, the racist is the choice to participate in the system that identifies on the basis of race, and the bigot, who doesn't care at all, but is simply entrenched with an iron rod that runs down to the core of their being, that because of your difference, you should be separate from me. Most bigots, if they could just put all people that don't fit their ideal in a specific place, that'd be great. That's why you hear, go back to where you came from. Well, anybody that says that speaks from a basis of ignorance, because they don't know that we didn't ask to come here. So that's not the right thing to say to exhibit your intellectual capacity.
Yeah.
But oftentimes bigotry clouds the mind from first asking the question, is it true? And how do I prove it? And then saying, well, what if there's an alternate reality? What if there's an alternate truth? Is there another path that I can go down? But oftentimes bigotry traps you. It traps you, because if you're a bigot living in your community, in your environment, in your neighborhood, in your town, in your family, you're trapped by that. And you are going to have to sacrifice something, quite possibly even your life, to escape what bigotry is. It is all encompassing, down to my red, white, and blues, whatever you call it, whatever. I'm going to represent that I am different from you. Even though, wait, hold on one second, I got to go to the bathroom. You're no different from me.
Uh-huh. Well, I go through that all the time. We all shit in the same toilet.
Exactly. I get hungry, the same thing. We all do the same thing. So it's really an intention. It is such a choice. And so in answering your question, even I think it was yesterday or day before yesterday, I'm talking to the president of a global company, and he's asking me the question, I think I know what needs to be done, but I don't quite know how to say it. So that's the answer to your question, is language. If you want to overcome your isms, you want to be able to overpower and become master of your ist choices, then first, language. So this is why I am not an African American. I don't know anything about Africa, wasn't born there, don't come from there. And if I went there, it would be at peril of my life to actually think that I could go back there and assimilate, because some people don't return from that. That's just the fact. I am an American, born and raised here. But it's true, because my family has done the genealogy. I know for a fact the name of the slave owner that named my family.
Wow.
I don't speculate.
That's
I don't join the party line because everybody else says so. I've got to know. So I know for a fact that my line is of African descent. So doesn't it make sense for me to say that, hey, I'm an American first? What if we all said, hey, we're all Americans first, and we're not really different, but we're distinct. We're a distinct and inclusive society, because all this diversity first, diversity and inclusion is bullshit. You cannot have diversity before inclusion. You must first include, and diversity happens.
Amen.
So I'm telling corporations, stop the lie. If you really want to do something, just speak to inclusion, because the inclusion will produce diversity. Your language. So again, my answer to your question. Go in and listen to yourself. Speak about what you have experienced, what you believe, what your perceptions, what happens when I was standing in church one day, somebody that knows me, and I walked up, she looked up, She didn't see me, Earl, but she saw me. And first thing she did is look for a purse.
Are you kidding me?
I'm not kidding. And
How do you respond in those situations? How do you respond in those situations?
I immediately understand.
Go, it's right here. Just say it's right here.
Give her back the purse. Sorry.
I know. The best thing was to have said nothing, but observe that is something that existed within her. And I just sent that up as a prayer that she find peace with that. And so language, and start with the language that you speak inside yourself.
Yes.
The language that you hide from everybody else. You'll say, oh, certainly I'm not prejudiced. I'm not racist. Yes, that person, that African-American, I have no problem with them. And inside, oh my God, if they ever came to my house, I just don't know what I do. If they ever talk to my son or my daughter, I just don't know what I do. If I saw my children hanging out with them, oh my God, I've got to call the police and stop them.
So what are people afraid of? Earl, what are people afraid of? Because that's the question that's been in the back of my mind throughout this conversation.
Question.
What are they afraid of? It's like, what's that fear of?
Okay, that brings us right back around, because all truth is circular. And you can test that because it brings you right back around to the beginning. Mm-hmm. This is a system that manages race for the purpose, based upon classification, providing access and the dispensation of resources. What people are afraid of, what white America is afraid of, is that we will replace them. Mm-hmm. Tiki Torch. That was a resounding anthem. That we want to remain at the top of the pecking order. That's where the term white privilege is coming from, which isn't really white privilege. It's really just, hey, the system, I want to maintain the system, the status quo. I want to be a person based upon seeing my lack of melanin, okay, that it grants me unfettered access to the system. However, if you are in this class or this class or this class, the system limits, prohibits, or denies you access to those resources. You can look in any of the systems in this country. You can look in the legal system. You'll find the same disparity. Any system in the country, you will see that, and you will see that it's a system. And because it's a system, you can do something about it.
So can I add something to that? Because you nailed it, and you already nailed it earlier. And if you put both pieces together, I think we have the exact answer. Mm-hmm. The inner critic to all human minds is the limiter. Yes. And that comes from our lineage, from those who have taught us, those who have supposedly built us up, but simultaneously limited us. So that's our teachers, our parents, unintentionally. Be careful, you're this, or don't do this, or you're smart, but you're not that smart. Be careful, or don't. Or it's just all the limits. And so the same thing that limits the American who's from African descent, I'm practicing, I'm working, I'm listening, I'm hearing you. That same person that has those limits bestowed upon them, we're experiencing the same thing as an American who's of French or Polish or whatever descent, all the random places I'm from. So I'm sitting here in the same slave mentality from a different system, saying that I'm not enough. So in my I'm not enough, I'm looking around and going, who's my competitor? Who's my competitor? Instead of the $1 million question, there's only one.
Yeah.
Right here. Right and there. The minute I've fallen in love with myself enough to know my genius and my infinite potential, it's not me versus Earl, which you and I get right away. Chris and I got right away. It's, hey, I see some brilliance in you. Hey, tell me more about it. I want to see more of it, and vice versa. And when we sit together, we just want to watch the other person elevate. Now, are we anomalies? Is there some luck? I mean, what is it? Like, what is it? There's people in this vibration or like us or whatever. What is it? Because this is something I would love to define. What is it? Is it an awareness? Is it a readiness? Is it a willingness to remove the limits? What is it that is common to us, and how do we spread it to others to realize the only person you've ever been competing with was yourself. And there's people like you who want you to win and want you to find your brilliance and will support you regardless of what you look like or you act like or where you're from. We all want the same thing. So at what point and what do we tell people, or what's the common ground to make this happen so we can all live like that? Because that's, I think, the question.
I think that you covered it just now. And if anyone listening walks away with this, then you are at the beginning of a brand new journey and discovery of yourself and your place in this human and diverse society. And that is first awareness. Awareness that you are one that matters, mixed in with billions of other people who are also one that matters. And then awareness, willingness, the willingness to alter your perception, to alter your perspective, to alter your language internally first, then externally. And then to act. Because if you do not add act to it, then you're just standing on a stage talking to yourself. So you must have awareness of the truth of a thing, and then the willingness to act upon it, beginning with me. And you will cause change, and you will see it in increments in your immediate environment. You will know that it is occurring because someone will say to you, hey, I've noticed something different about you. When we were joking about that Negro over there the other day, you didn't say a word. And you usually might be pretty participant in that. What's going on with you? Well, I'm growing. I'm growing. And I just don't feel the need to do that. You don't have to defend yourself. Just don't offend yourself.
That is gold.
Bam. Say that one more time. Say that one more time.
Say
you
it
don't
again.
have to defend yourself. Just don't offend yourself.
Boom.
Because hurt people hurt people. So if you offend yourself, you are most likely to offend another.
And so, one place that I've seen this and I've watched myself shift, and I love throwing myself under the bus to be the example that we can glance at because I'm a human who makes many mistakes and grows in the process.
He does.
There were times, playing basketball, you'll play in different teams and different leagues. And sometimes there's a group that's more racist or whatever, because you're playing against an all American team with people who are of African descent. And sometimes the white kids are like, oh, they're not as smart as us. And I've heard this stuff. And when I was a kid in high school, I remember coaches saying, okay, we're going to be better than this team because they're inner city kids and, they're athletes, but they're not that smart and we're smart. What they were really saying was we have more money to spend on coaching and better training facilities. And the reality is we've got better practice, and we defined it that we're somehow smart. No, these kids are barely able to get to the school because they didn't have housing or all the other things because of limited equity issues. Bottom line, I never said anything because I'm like, oh, that's true, because they said it. An adult who's part of my identity development, then it starts to sink in. But I'm always like, well, that was kind of a jerk move. So slowly, to your point, I'd be sitting on a bench and somebody would go, oh, dude, where'd my cell phone go? Hey, is that black guy still here? And they'd look around and I'd be like, and that's like you said, it's the first thing they say. I'm going to be honest with you. 9 times out of 10, it was the random white guy stealing phones going, they'll blame the black. It's like, it's so to the point, I got to a point where, and now like, I'll say clearly, I go, that's really funny that you picked the black guy. I go, because honestly, you're way more of a douche than that guy is. And I'll just say that and walk away. Because what are you going to do? Punch the 50-year-old guy in the face? And
you're nicer than I am.
No. But to the point, that's an evolution. And I love your point. You don't have to defend, you just don't offend you. And it can happen in steps. It can happen in first, don't participate. It can happen with a comment. That's your level of choice. But here's what I want to challenge everybody to, because you've so beautifully explained prejudice, racism, and bigotry. I want to challenge people, because I'm in this challenge myself, and I've said to this, Chris, and you gave a great way to do it. Let's all get off the fence for things that we know need to be changed, because here's the deal. We've got a limited time here on this planet. And I don't want to sit here with every issue that comes up and say, you're this, you're that, you're wrong. But what about if right now we take Earl's advice and we say, I'm going to become more aware. I don't always have to defend, but I don't want to offend my being. So what if when we see a bigoted comment, we behave slightly differently and just test it just a little bit? Yeah. And what if when we see something like, let's go to something that's happening right now. We're looking in Texas and Georgia and other places where they're trying to change voting laws that are clearly ist. I don't know what ist you want to apply, but they're ist.
It's bullshit.
It's bullshit. And I'm looking at friends like Brett Hurt, who's the CEO of Data.World, who's only data driven. Brett is literally saying, this is a CEO who's worth a ton of money, who's doing all the right things, who traditionally would be very conservative in his voting. He's going, this is bullshit. There's no data-driven nature to this. This is totally to alienate a certain group from voting who won't vote for this other group. It's like, cut the shit. So at some point, let's pull our whatever's out, whatever you got, pull it out, get off the fence and speak your mind. There's your awareness. Let's take levels of within our own comfort, but let's move more quickly than not. Because like you said, here's the deal. We're all distinct, and we can start becoming the distinction and not just what's the difference. I remember that I was misdefining what I was trying to say. And you and another good friend of ours, Patrick Adieno, who's also, well, he actually is African-American. He came from African Cambridge. He's the exception to the rule.
Yes, he is.
He's the one exception to the rule. He literally is African-American.
Yeah.
So he's the one.
That's the only time that it applies.
Yeah, so he's the one. So I was going to say with Black American, I'm like, wait, no, he is African-American. So he's the one.
Yes.
Cool. So I said something like, wouldn't it be beautiful if we all just didn't see color? Because I was like, we just, and your point was, whoa, you're missing it. And you guys, you know what it was? I just wanted the problem to stop. And I wasn't looking at a solid solution. So you guys guided me back, which again is why we love to talk and listen and communicate. And so to the point, I think that we're at a point now where let's create the awareness. Let's step into it. Let's get off the fence. Let's speak out loud. Let's be willing to be wrong. And let's love that idea, because growth comes along with it.
Yes, absolutely.
Well said, Scott. Well said.
You know, if you ever see somebody who's got a cup in their hand, and all of a sudden you lose control of that cup, and what do? You draw everything you can do. When you are fearful of losing control, the natural inclination is to try to take control. So it only validates that there's a fearfulness that control is being lost. So it's a hand grab. Whatever way you can. Well, let's just control their voting rights, you know. And I'm going to use what Patricia is saying, because that's the title, the working title of the book we're writing, is that bringing it back around to how to simply be human today, to think from a position of human, you know, and human is a conjunctive term that comes from humus. On the periodic chart, you know, humus is earth, and man isn't a gender. Man means mind. It is the spirit of the earth. And that's why we come from it and we'll return to it, because all truth is circular. We come back to it. So we start as human beings, and then we create systems around it so that, you know, we can have more, so they can have less. I can feel better so long as you're feeling worse. You know, if we remove ourselves from those systems, first again, by changing the language, that we use even to describe ourselves. There's really no such thing as white. There's really no such thing as black, not applied to a human body. It is the anthropomorphization of that term, giving it human characteristics, but it isn't a real thing. Therefore, it's a choice, and it is an agreement between those who control access to the system. And so I don't have to become a radicalist. I don't have to get up and rage, but I know that my life is about impact. I can impact more lives by understanding first the piece within, the words that I use within to identify myself, to maintain my dignity, so that when I speak it out, what is transferred is not my upset over what happened and this injustice and that injustice, but what is transferred is my peace first.
Yep.
Now you can hear me.
Okay, I have a question for you. We're going into overtime. Can we ask you another question? You good?
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay, so one of the things that we've been doing, we've been focusing a lot on the understanding from a Caucasian perspective or a different perspective of what racism, bigotry, and prejudice is. Now, talk to us a little bit about what we can do for the Black community. How can we, because problems happen on both sides. We've got, people saying, oh, the white people are bad. What do you say to the Black community for us to find that bridge that we're trying to build and design for them? Like, oh, all white people are bad. And I'll use myself as an example. I realized this the other day. I am not the stereotypical dude. I mean, I have the bandana on, the hat on backwards. I wear camo shorts. I've got tattoos. Stereotypically, you could look at me as a hillbilly or a redneck or something like that. Oh, he's this. One time I was at actually the San Diego Wild Animal Park with my son, and for some reason, I don't know what it was. It wasn't even packed. It was during COVID. We had the little special guest pass thing, and I felt like people were staring at me, and I was like, and it was right in the heat of everything, what everything was going on, and I was like, oh shit, I kind of look like one of them. And it was like, it was so weird. So what can we do on both sides to speak to the Black community and how we can, not everybody's bad? Because I want to make sure we capture both of those sides, because we have a multicultural audience.
Yes. There is a phenomenon occurring now where you have a certain segment of a particular society that is feeling uncertain about themselves in the light of the new light, the extraordinary light being shined on injustice that is actual occurring. You can see it now for yourself. And so people are taking a second look or even a third look at this particular community and what their story actually is. Because there's so much that people don't know. And my answer to your question is, take a moment to have a conversation with humility, not the need to justify yourself, because your whiteness don't mean shit. It is utterly irrelevant. But your humanness, your humanity means everything. So take a moment to take off the cap of privilege, to take off the cap of fragility, to take off the cap of I'm better than you, and talk to another human being about what they are experiencing. And what you will mostly discover is that it's not that I don't understand. It's not that I don't think. It's not that I don't desire to improve myself. But the limitation of the actual limitation that the system puts on my access to the resources is staggering. And there's so many truths around that. But here's another truth. Americans of African descent are a family-based people. Family. I know the statistics would tell you otherwise, but it's a lie. We're about family. We're about mothers and fathers. And yes, the statistics will tell you, oh, those people over there, they're just animals because, they eat their young and the fathers never hang around and they're all in prison. They're not in prison because that's where they want to be. Because again, justice is now making its way up to the top. And you will begin to see the strategy for the separation of family. That's how you control a society, by breaking up the family.
Mm-hmm.
While on the other side of that equation, you're doing your best to drive family together. But here is where you get to see that plan, that strategy is not working, because there is nobody else in America that chooses to wake up in the morning with an AK and go into the grocery store, go into the high school, go into the church, and kill as many people as possible because mama pissed me off. We don't do that. The killing of each other that we engage in are in certain conditions, in certain societal circumstances, where the only options are either do this or that. And if you have the level of awareness and then the willingness to keep yourself separate from it, as I did, because every summer was gang recruit summer. You had to know where not to be, who not to talk to. And so you can get yourself to a point where you can take control of your own elevation. Yes, Stalin did this with collectivization. Absolutely. And it's all tactic. So go to a person and as random as possible, ideally. Don't go to the safe place. Don't go to the black lady down the street, or the black lady that comes and cleans your house. Go somewhere where you have to step outside of your boundaries, your parameters of feeling safe, and simply be human. Simply be human. I am in West Texas right now, where in West Texas, they don't wear masks here. They wear the guns, but they don't wear masks. And try to make them, and then you'll get to understand what their gun means.
Yeah.
And I have no fear. No fear. I had a guy walk past me and step aside and say, "Oh yeah, here you go, sir." In the West Texan drawl, because I have to be the energetic representation of their perception of me in order to see me that way and choose to treat me that way. It doesn't happen. I'm a human being. I think that one person can make a difference. And so I ask all of you listening, are you going to be the one who simply chooses within yourself, and yourself are two different words, yourself, your beingness, to say, okay, am I what I'm assigned to be, part of the white race, and therefore this, or am I love? And love is something that you do. It's not something that you feel. We romanticize love. Love is an action. I dare anybody, this will be the first time I've said it in this way, I dare anybody listening to pull forward into your memory, from your memory, a moment where you truly felt loved. And you will only be able to describe it as an action. How'd you know your mama loved you? Because, man, she would do this. She'd make these cookies. How'd you know your daddy loved you? Because he would take me here. And it's always going to be an action. Love is something that you do. The romanticism is something that is assigned to it. It comes later. It's an attachment. There you go.
So that was flawless. And you actually just segued into a show that we're going to do again in the future without knowing it. because you said something that I know is on everybody's mind. Why is it that we have a lot of white people, traditionally white people, who are shooting up schools or just losing it and shooting people in restaurants or at work or in supermarkets? And why is it that blacks are killing one another in inner cities? And I'm visualizing this. I'm thinking, when you've created a system that says back to your point, you're not enough. Those are the responses of you're not enough in both situations. It's that simple. You're in a city and you've got to think of this. What makes me able to continue on in the city? Is it a college degree? No. For a moment, it might be being the best basketball player in the team or being a football player, and that can kind of sidestep me from the streets. But the streets themselves, it's, are you tough enough to take a punch? Are you not scared? Are you okay? Can you fight for yourself? And if you can't do that, you're screwed. So it elevates that punch in 5th grade to that, aggressive beatdown in 8th grade suddenly comes with guns. Mm-hmm. And so we're sitting here and we're criticizing that community when that's all part of the inner dialogue that's been spoon-fed from the slave period. No different. And this is where we're missing something. No different than that's a low socioeconomic controlled group. And the same thing is the small town America, white guy who's sitting here saying, my life sucks. I'm not enough. People say I'm a weirdo. I'm a freak. Well, you know what? Screw y'all. And now they're going to go out and shoot something up. Yeah. And so this literally is the same fix. It's getting into people's psyche, reminding them they're infinitely powerful, beautiful, have shitloads of brilliance. And that someone at one time told them they're not enough, whether it was via religion, that you have to look outside yourself, whether it was via a teacher who said you're not smart, or a parent who said you're just like your older brother and you're stupid. And that shit has to end today. And so at some point, I'd love to have you back to talk about that. But, finishing up this show, I just want to throw that in because when you brought that up, I really felt that we differentiate the two. Well, they're different groups. It's the same problem. Yeah. It's what's been fed in here and what do you believe in here? That's it, man. That's it.
Yeah.
And we have the ability to heal it, but we need more people having these conversations in public forums, one-on-one, in the families. To your point, to stereotype, a lot of the American families from African descent, American families from Mexican and Latino descent, and Jewish families that I know are the most tight-knit families I know. And I'm sure I missed some group, whatever. But it's funny because they get, criticized, like you say, well, but you're this, but you're this, but you're this. But if you want to be honest and look statistically, I can walk into any place and that's the groups that I see being the most family oriented, who have insurance policies for their own group. Like, hey, Chris isn't doing well. We'll help him out. This person's like, hey, let's take care of him. He needs some assistance. And there's other groups that are fractured more. Those are the ones that are shooting up the schools. So collectively, would love to have you back and talk more.
Indeed.
How do we take these? How do we take these 3 breakdowns? How do we adjust the mindset of all of us so we can all go back and heal our individual groups, which means all lives matter in that sense. We're going to heal all of our groups. But right now, all we've been asking is to start with one group, the one that's being hurt the most in our faces. And so I think we should all take a peek at the idea of Black Lives Matter is not something saying all lives don't. And I think that we can all look at this. We hear all groups that are suffering. We collectively love all of you because we are you. And we all just want to take care of one another. So let's stop the hurting. Let's start the conversation and let's have more people like Earl in this world.
And thank you for sharing that. And if I may, in conclusion, just so that there's clarity and understanding that I am an American of African descent. And I do not, because I am an American of African descent, difference myself from an American of German, an American of Italian, an American of Slovenic, American of Hispanic, American of whatever. Nor do I differentiate myself from those who are actually Italian Americans, African Americans, because the only distinction there is that one immigrated here and became a citizen, and the other was born here and is a citizen. So it's just a matter of honoring the truth of what we are, rather than using it divisively to engage in methodologies of control and keeping people down, limiting their actual right as a human being to elevate themselves. Thomas Jefferson said it, the pursuit of happiness. But the pursuit of happiness was meant for a certain class of people. And at that point in time, it was those who owned land, not everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
But now, let us all have the ability, the commitment to pursue happiness. And the definition of happiness is your own definition.
And I think that happiness is a byproduct of elevating the sense of self and falling in love with yourself. And I think that's something that if we all did simultaneously, we're all going to find our brilliance and we're going to have a much better world. And I wish that on everybody. And I think, again, it starts with conversations just like this. And Earl, you are superhuman to me. Every time we connect, it's more than a pleasure. I'm sure Chris echoes this too. Like,
1,000%.
When people come on whose vibration, we have a coaching program called Raise Your Vibration. Really what that means is nothing more than look inside and realize your vibration is already raised. You just need to recognize it. And, we have to do it in terms that resonate with people, but your vibration is through the roof because you've recognized your infinite potential and your beauty, and allowing that to, be shared with others through a show like this is more than our pleasure. It's incredible. So I thank you. And I'm psyched that you came on our show tonight.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, Scott. Where can people get a hold of you? Because I have a link, but where can people get a hold of you? Is it here? Right here?
That's my website for the Grail Company. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm also the host of a podcast called the 2020 Foresight Podcast, wherein I interview exclusively CEOs of small to global companies. As I said, I was just a guest of a global company yesterday, and we talked about this very subject matter. But you can find that on LinkedIn and all of the platforms. And also say hello again to a shout out to Patricia. She and I are working feverishly, tirelessly on completing the writing of what would be my first book, and which the working title is How to Be a Human Today. And to anyone who's looking for programs, speaking engagements on this subject matter and a wide range of other subject matter, please feel free to reach out to me through the website or through LinkedIn.
Love it.
Whew. Earl. We have like so many comments. Like we can spend another 2 hours just going through the comments. I apologize, guys. Pamela Aubrey has been dropping some major bombs. She says the definition of happiness is your own definition. Patricia says, happy dance tonight with Christopher, Scott, and Earl. Marlene says, thank you for your wisdom and your erudition.
Erudition, yes.
I have to wear them. That's a big word, Marlene. And I don't have my glasses.
Honestly, that word looks like I need my reading glasses too.
Is that expedition? Are we going on an exposition?
Erudition, yes. Yeah.
Nellie's in the house. Nellie, thank you so much for being here. She says, now to be human is much needed instruction so many people need. It's so true. It's so true. Earl, it's been an absolute blessing and an honor to have you here with us tonight. Thank you for the extended version of tonight. We didn't intend on taking more of your time, but you're so eloquent. You're so beautiful in what you're saying, and you have such a powerful way of saying it, yet it's such a place from the heart. I mean, it truly is. It's from a place, Scott talks about it a lot, the observer situation. You're looking at it from a situation of not reacting emotionally as most of us do. You're looking at it from an intellectual standpoint. And how can I seek first to understand, then to be understood? And I think that's the conversation that we all need to be having with ourselves and everybody else, because to your point, if you love yourself, get excited. If you love yourself, if you're operating from a zone of love for yourself, then how can you actually extend hate out into the world? And I think it all comes from what you're saying is starting with ourselves, starting with the questions that we're asking ourselves. I talk to people every single day, and it's amazing how many people are purposely making themselves miserable because they don't even feel like they deserve the opportunity for success. So they keep themselves so limited. The power of what you said tonight, and we definitely want you to have you back on the show, because there's so many different discussions that we can have, and you are impacting people. And that's what we're all about really here is being able to have a conversation that is unfiltered, that everybody can participate in, that we can learn and grow. Like Scott said, I did a video, I did a walk and talk video when stuff was going on. And Scott says, you know, you might want to think about that. My wife said, you might want to think about that. All lives matter. And so through these conversations, we can all better learn and be able to go into our communities and say, hey, you know what? Listen, I just watched this guy, and please, guys, share this. We're not asking you to share it just for numbers. We want you, I mean, not even for numbers. We want you to share this for impact, because there's so many, I wrote down here, so many sound bites to take out of this and encapsulate into 30-second snippets of what you said tonight. Please keep sharing your message. Please keep talking. And you have an open invitation back here on our show with us. So Earl, thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm just honored to be here. Thank you. All right.
We're gonna stick you backstage, and we're gonna say something intelligent, hopefully, to end up the show. But don't go anywhere. We'll be right back there to talk to you just a little bit more. So thank you, Scott. Thank you for bringing Earl to the conversation, man. I mean, seriously powerful. And the dichotomy, I guess, or the weirdness of it, it's the fact that he and Patricia know each other too. So I mean, it's it's this beautiful thing. Pamela, again, I want to acknowledge you. You had some great comments in here. I want to bring them back, but she says this was an amazing conversation. I'm grateful to have been here to listen. Thank you. Marlene says your voice rocks. I mean, seriously, there's so many comments here that I didn't get a chance to get to all of them, but we appreciate and love each and every one of you guys that are here tonight in the discussion, because this is what we can do from this point forward. We can go and turn off the cameras and go to our normal life and finish and go, okay, I got inspired and I learned things, or we can actually sit there and have that conversation with our family and have that conversation with our friends to be able to say, hey, listen, you know what? I heard this, or for me, we participated in this conversation today. And what are your thoughts on that? I mean, having those unfiltered conversations with your friends and your family, and perhaps maybe getting to a point in your life where you're like, is this working for me or against me? Am I really in that system, as he so beautifully calls it? And we didn't even talk about the prison system of what, you know, keeps people down. It's a whole other show. Just the beauty of the conversation tonight and the impact of these words and our heartfelt messages. We just love each and every one of you. Scott, I'll let you bring it home, man.
Well, I'm going to do a quick question. I'm going to change it out from normally I have my little pretty synopsis, but I'm going to do something different right now.
Go for it.
Everyone who's listening right now, think of some of the genius that Earl just shared with us, because you can see where his heart is. You can see where his intelligence is. And I call Earl a heart smart person. There's many intellectuals that I know, super smart, but there's not as many heart smart people who are going to observer space. They look at the world without a deep attachment to emotion, and they try to really say, what's really happening here? And where do I fit in to affect the systems and change the systems and make things better? And a lot of us are creating more awareness, which is what Earl talked about. I would love you guys to drop some of your thoughts, whether it's right now or after we finish, into the comments of what would you like us to talk about next time? You know, some of the specific isms, the specific systems, what we can break down. Because Earl is a wealth of knowledge. And I want to share another thing that I think you guys all need to hear. We have a super intelligent group of people who are part of our family. And the Unfiltered crew is literally, you know, the comments that we see, the interaction, the direct messages. Your intellect and your heart smart nature is just super high and through the roof. One of the things I want you to think about is this is a gentleman you're seeing, and this is his first book, and he's over 50 years old, and you can tell the wealth of knowledge he has. So I want you guys to think about this. This is somebody who probably could have written 50 books to date, but for one reason or another, as he developed, he's waited this long to write a book. So today, for all of us, is the first day of the rest of our lives where we write our story. So if Earl's going to write the book, if we're going to learn new definitions of prejudice, racism, and bigotry, let's get off the fence today. Let's start taking a stand for what we believe in, whether we put it to paper, we put it to action, we put it into our work, we put it into our life. Let's start living with meaning starting right now. And let's take what Earl shared with us, what Chris and I talk about, and in this moment, really live to the fullest. Share what you'd like to talk about, you know, next time, of where we can break down different systems or just isms. And mostly, go be you. Go get off the fence. Go live your truth. Don't hold back. You're supported here. We love you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Unfiltered experience. We love you. Go enjoy your weekend. Go make many awesome moments. And please, if this impacted you, please share this. Please connect with somebody. Have a conversation with Earl. We love you guys. We will see you next week here on the Unfiltered Experience. Or next week. We love you guys. Thank you guys for being a part of our Unfiltered crew. We love each and every one of you. Patricia, Nelly, Pam, Marlene, Robert, all you guys. I mean, just everybody. Pamela, you're just Marlene. I'm gonna keep saying Andrea. You guys are just absolutely phenomenal. Thank you so much for spending your time here with us and contributing to the conversation. Yes. Love y'all. Good night. Go out there and be brilliant souls. We love you guys. Peace out.
Love you guys.